Welcome to the Joke Zero podcast, where we talk about all things indie filmmaking, what it takes to make an indie film. And this season, we are focusing on Joke Zero's first ever feature film, Plan B, which is out now on Apple, on Amazon, wherever you prefer to rent or buy movies. Also, this podcast, we are talking to everybody who is involved in the film, whether it was in front of the camera or behind the camera. And we've had a lot of fun. I'm Anna Roisman. I'm hosting and I'm in the movie. And we're with Brandon Tambori, our writer-director. And today, I'm very excited. We have a very special person on the podcast. She was the intimacy coordinator for Plan B. We are talking to Judi Lewis Ockler. How are you?
I'm great. So glad to be here with y'all.
Oh, I'm glad to have you. She has good energy. I'm like, she's an intimacy coordinator. She brings like such a smile to the Zoom, at least for now, but I imagine to the set.
I think that's part of the job. Bring some good energy, number one.
Yeah, totally. But you have a very cool job. I feel like this is a job that's fairly new. It's maybe not new in on certain productions, but in the indie world, in the TV world, like, I'm an actor. No one ever asked me, if I would do a scene, if there would be I never knew that there was an intimacy coordinator position probably when I first started out. Obviously, now I do, but I'm just curious how you got your start in this industry.
Yeah, so it is relatively new in the understanding that we know the role of now, Anna. So I started in 2018. Actually, 2000, let's go back to 2016. A friend of mine, her name is Alicia Rodas. She is now the head of all of intimacy coordination for HBO, but at the time was asking this question, which you were just sort of alluding to, which is, why are we not treating scenes of intimacy with the same care and consideration that we would, say, a fight scene?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of options and opportunities for injury, right? And a safety consideration. And why aren't we thinking about that the same way we would like a fight scene or a stunt? I think it was also based in her own experiences as an actor and as a stunt performer. So she started doing some research and working and collaborating with a couple of other colleagues. And she's based in New York City. We were actually working together in academia teaching stage combat, street fights. And she said to me, hey, listen, I'm thinking about this new thing called intimacy direction, and I want to build this workshop. And you would be the perfect person because at the time I was working as a fight director, staging scenes. And oftentimes I would get the opportunity to do the position because I was a woman and they were looking for help to support the woman in the scene, because oftentimes those scenes sort of intersected intimacy and violence. So maybe it was an assault scene, for example. And I always thought in my work, I was like, I know how to stage a violent scene, but this other aspect of the work, there's something missing that I could definitely use. So when she told me she was working on this, I jumped at the opportunity to go. And I went to the workshop and I was floored. It was exactly what I was looking for. So I said to her, anytime, anywhere, any place you want to do more of this, as you continue to research, can I help you in any way? And in 2018, she decided to launch what was then called the Intimacy Directors International organization, a not-for-profit organization that sort of supported the idea of intimacy direction and coordination as its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a symposium in Indiana to train. And I did that. I went there for 10 days and met what we now are the foundations and the pioneers in the industry and worked with all of them. And the rest, as they say, is history. I came back to New York and I literally hit the ground running with my 2 feet. And the floodgates opened right after that, or just before that. As a matter of fact, when we were there, she was in talks with HBO because of the Me Too movement and the corresponding Harvey Weinstein incidents and scandal and expose had come to light, was really coinciding with the beginning of the work. So people were knocking from the producers down to say, hey, how can we make sure that we're treating these scenes with care and consideration to make our actors feel supported, but also make sure that we're getting the work that we want? So as soon as I got back in 2018, 19, it just was a floodgate. Not only in film, but also in theater and in academia. The big institutions I teach at NYU, they were like, we want our students to have these skills and tools so that they know, number one, what's happening in the industry when they graduate. They have a vocabulary. And number two, they're prepared to do these scenes. They have the workings of what they would need to do to not just be directed, but be confident, be comfortable in the working of the scene.
That's so cool. Congrats. That's really awesome. I was just thinking when, as you were describing that and you were talking about the workshop and working at NYU, I'm like, when I went to acting school, like no one taught us that. And then you go online, you submit yourself for, say, an indie film and they say, oh, there will be some, intimate scenes. And you don't even know what that looks like. Is it a kiss? Is it a sex scene? Or, you don't even know what questions to ask. And so many people, especially young people in this industry, are just like, I just need a job. So they'll sign up to do it. And it could be very uncomfortable. I remember going even to a meeting once with a manager and he said, oh, well, we need to see what you look like in a bathing suit because in case you get, asked to play a role. And I was like, I remember leaving being like, something was wrong here. This industry can be like any industry. It can be really shady and weird and everyone's so excited to work that it's just, I don't know. So I'm grateful for the work that you're doing and that you are just able to bring light to, a scary, vulnerable kind of moment for people in different jobs.
Yeah, that's exactly a big part of what I do. Now, SAG, as the union has set industry standards, now we have policies and protocols that are put in place that you cannot ask an actor to, take off their clothes in an audition, for example. There are levels, there are structures by which that can be, put in place. But if you don't know those policies and procedures, and you are, like you say, a young actor or performer that's put into this position, there's a power dynamic inherent in what you just described. I want the job. I want to say yes because I've been trained that saying no is a negative thing, or that I'm not going to get the job, or I'll be perceived as difficult to work with. It's part of the reason that my role exists, is to take that pressure off of the actor and the performer and allow my role to be the mediator. My role is to make sure that I understand, as the industry changes and what the standards are, what the rules are, so that I can inform those actors. At the end of the day, it's all about having agency and autonomy over your own body so that you can make the right choices for you. So the work of that is having that knowledge and understanding so that you feel as though you can make a confident choice when you're deciding on taking a role, when you're deciding on knowing the tools to say, like you said, an intimate scene. If I know that I have the agency to ask a question, can you be more specific? Can you tell me what that means? Can you describe that to me? If I didn't know that I had the agency to ask that question, then I would be left at my own devices when I was asked to audition or when I was asked to be on the set. So part of that is education and knowledge. And again, my role is there to make sure that I'm asking those questions to be specific so that the actor has the choice to understand and describe and be able to interact in that way that they feel confident. They don't feel like they have agency. You're not going to get the product you want. It's not going to look good. And somebody might get injured or hurt or harassed. And so that's my job, is to really do that work ahead of time. And Brandon can speak to that, to really make sure that it's all cleared and laid out so that when we get on set, we can get it done, and we can get it done quickly, efficiently, and look great.
Oh my God, you're awesome. I love this because I'm like, wow, I feel like every project should have an intimacy coordinator, even if there's not necessarily a love scene or, a kiss or whatever. It's just, there are so many situations you're put in that you weren't trained to do. And I feel like your work as a stunt person also is remarkable and awesome. And I feel like you probably saw that earlier on in your career, that like, seeing people put in situations that they're not necessarily comfortable for because they bring in a professional like you to do that scene instead or something. And I don't know, do you think that was like a great, training for what you're doing now? Or are you still doing stunt work? I'm curious about it.
I just did my first stunt in a long time.
Congrats.
Thanks. It was literally the week before the strike.
Oh,
it was amazing. I couldn't believe they called in. It was for this movie called Guns Up with Christina Ricci and Kevin James. So it should be out very soon.
Awesome.
It was awesome because the description of what I was going to be doing, inevitably, it's like, this is what we need you for. And then it ended up being something totally different, but it ended up being a little bit more of an acting role than it was a stunt role. So it was great. And I've never had this happen to me before, but the stunt coordinator called me and said, the director loved what you did and you made the cut in the scene. So it'll be great.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. But I actually have an anecdote that I can share with you if you're interested about this very situation. I was put in as a stunt performer that needed an intimacy coordinator, but it didn't exist then.
Wow.
So I was working on this film and I was doing a utility stunt. As you may or may not know, I'm there to just sort of help to set the shot so that the director could take a look at it and see if what they want to change or what they want to do pre-shooting. So this sort of like a previs shot, right? And I was supposed to be a dead body floating in the water. It's great. Great, right? So, the understanding was that it's a thriller, it's a mystery, and we don't know who the killer is. And so this ending shot of the film was going to be when the credits roll, and it sort of reveals who the killer is. So this body is sort of floating face down in their underwear. So on my previs on the utility, I got into my, whatever, I had like a nude swimsuit or whatever. We shot it. They're like, this looks great. Awesome. This is what we're going to do. So we get there on the day, and I have my costume. And I get ready to go. And the coordinator comes over to me and says, actually, they changed their mind. They want to do it naked. I said,
After you're there, after you have already signed a contract, probably you're on set.
yep, I'm on set. I'm on set. And the coordinator comes over to me and says, they want to do it naked. What do you think? And I said, well, I don't know what I think. What do you think I should do? And the coordinator was, I can't help you with this. This is your own decision. You have to do this. And I said, okay. And I went back and forth a little bit. I just remember feeling I wasn't really uncomfortable to do that, but I just felt really pressured in order to make sure that I wasn't going to be taken advantage of, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It also wasn't on your own time. It's not what you signed up to do that day. So
Correct. It wasn't that I wasn't against it, but I felt there was something in me that said I really would need to make sure that I wasn't being taken advantage of. And that meant financially, physically, etc. So I had a couple of conversations, I made some phone calls, and I said that I would do it and that I negotiated for more money in a different contract. And when I did that, the coordinator said, okay, well, you'll need to talk to the producer about that. I said, okay. And they took me into a tent that was pitch dark. There were no lights in the tent. It was like Video Village, but there hadn't been set up. It was just the tent. And then the producer comes in by themselves, just me and the producer, to have this chat. And I remember thinking, this is really weird. And I just stated my case and what I wanted. And he sort of pushed back a little bit about the money. All I asked for was extra money and then to make sure that it was a closed set.
which are perfectly normal things when you're doing any kind of nude scene or anything. Yeah.
Exactly. Perfectly normal ask. It wasn't anything outside of the norm. And I got some pushback on his part, mostly from the money. That's what producers need to do, right? I just remember feeling really uncomfortable with being placed in this isolation completely on my own. I'd been doing stunts for a couple of years, but I was by no means somebody with a position of authority in any way. So I got what I asked for. So it was great.
Good.
I'm fine. I'm good. Let's go out. And we started to shoot. And I looked around and they had not closed the set. There were all of these people that I knew didn't need to be there. We didn't need those 5 PAs sitting over there, on the ice chest, watching around. And the SAG rep was sitting there. And I'm thinking, like, why aren't you doing your job? I'm asking. And I remember just feeling really frustrated that I had to watch over that. It shouldn't have been my job to do that.
No.
Right? It's to just keep asking and doing and asking and doing. But again, you go with the hierarchy. The set is a set and you don't want to make waves and you don't want to step outside your lane and you don't want to be, there's always that inherent feeling that if I speak too loud, if I complain too much, I'm the blue collar here. I'm not the person that can demand my own needs and attention. So it was a learning experience. It was all fine. I had no problems. We shot it. It was great. But the day, I just remember that experience it just was uncomfortable. And when I started working in this field as an intimacy coordinator, I said, that's exactly why my job exists. Exactly. I didn't have any harm come to me. Everything was fine. No problems. But if I would have had somebody that could have been in my corner, that could have helped support me, I could have been doing much more time working on my scuba and my breathing and thinking about what I was doing and not having to worry about watching to see if the set was closed or watching to see if the SAG rep was calling in or, making sure that all those things were taken care of.
That's a wild story. I'm glad you had the intuition to stick up for yourself, though. Originally, you were like, hold on, like, I know that I can get paid more. I know that this is, what I want with the closed set. Like, I'm glad that you at least, even though it was uncomfortable and I'm sorry you went through that you stood up for yourself and you ended up getting what you needed. But not many people would know to do that. So I feel like that's a really good lesson. And I'm glad that you're able to like take an experience like that and then go and like work on sets where you can make people feel comfortable when that happens. That's really cool.
I always feel like champions have existed out there before this role ended up in its, what we now understand it to be. It's a little bit more holistic. But before it existed, my stunt coordinator in the lane that he could be in was like, these are the questions you need to ask. These are the things you need to do. He was my champion. He just couldn't speak for me. He couldn't step outside of that lane. I've had costume designers that have said things like, why don't we put an extra pad in here for you? Why don't we just take this and, cover this?
I was just going to say wardrobe is always on your side with like, if you don't feel comfortable at all in anything, they're always like cool people to talk to about it.
Exactly. So wardrobe has always been champion. There's been movement directors or choreographers that have come in to work on pieces that have done sex scenes that you wouldn't call them an intimacy coordinator at the time, but you would have definitely had somebody go, yeah, let's get some help in here. Let's make sure that we have somebody who's a movement specialist to do that. But maybe that person isn't also thinking about knowing the policies and procedures and protocols, knowing the closed set protocols. So in the sense that the role has existed by people volunteering out of their good faith and their experiences, it has been done. It just hasn't sort of been identified as one individual role. But I have been very fortunate in my career that I've had champions that have watched out for me and watched out for my safety as I've, grown and learned. I want to pay that forward and just use that experience to give to certainly the next generation, but also in any capacity that I'm, working on a set.
That's awesome. Well, I have to ask you now, how did you get involved with Plan B?
I was thinking about that, and Brandon, I went back and I looked, and I think it was Eric Blinkvist called me. It might have just been he went to intimacy directors and coordinators, but I'm not sure. Brandon, do you know?
I actually don't know. I know I definitely didn't find you. So Eric, who you mentioned, he was our UPM. So he was responsible for hiring a lot of the crew members. And I remember telling him that I wanted an intimacy coordinator. And he kind of just presented you to me. And you were great. And you and I talked. And I think we hit it off a bit. And you made me feel comfortable with what we were going to be doing. So yeah, I think that's how it happened.
I think, Anna, it was like what happened with Alicia and HBO. Because literally after Harvey Weinstein went down, HBO would like, oh shit, help with sex scenes, Google, click. And they found her. And I think that's maybe what happened with Brandon and Joke Zero was they might have gone to one of the, again, burgeoning organizations where I'm trained and certified through, which is intimacy directors, coordinators.
That's cool. Did you have fun working with Jamie and John on set?
Yes. It was a great time.
I imagine you become part of the scene in a lot of ways when you guys are like, blocking it and working out, what the moments are. I imagine you're like the friend who's also there, who's like, all right, here's what we're going to do or something.
And I have to apologize, Brandon, to you for laughing openly during that sex scene. Because it was so funny.
She ruined the take.
There were certainly a lot of laughs, but even just to stress how important Judi was to really all of the intimacy scenes, like Judi mentioned, kind of collaborating even before shooting. So I remember sending Judi the script pages, and I think I may have actually made some tweaks where Judi was like, oh, what do you envision for this? And I would kind of lay out what I wanted. And I even changed some of the wording just to really make it as really descriptive as possible, just so the actors knew exactly what they were getting into. And I didn't want any graphic sex scenes or anything like that. It's a movie about having a baby, so you kind of do have to have at least one sex scene. So I just wanted to make sure everyone was as safe and comfortable as possible. And Judi really helped accomplish that.
I just think it ended up being really funny, which is not an easy feat, but you have those two, Jamie and John, especially, but also Michael. The scenes with Michael were really funny as well. Those three feeling confident. I mean, that's what it's all about. If they feel like they don't have to worry about all the mechanics and all the things that may make them feel as though they're exposed in a way that's not good, they can soar. And I think that they definitely had a good time with it, or at least that was the feedback that they gave me, that they had a good time.
That's how I felt as well. I think it was just a positive experience all around. And specifically for Jamie, I remember while we were actually shooting, like the first few days of set, I think I went up to her after shooting one day and said, are you around for a call with the intimacy coordinator like tonight or tomorrow? And she was like shocked, like, wow, we have an intimacy coordinator. And she was like very pleasantly surprised by that. And yeah, I feel like Jamie and John and Michael really felt comfortable having one on set. So I definitely recommend it for any filmmakers or aspiring filmmakers out there listening right now.
I also think it's really cool to hear that you guys connected just over the script, because so many people, as a writer, now I'm thinking back, I'm like, oh my God, a sex scene. Like so many people just get a script and it'll say, they kiss or they have sex. And then, you book the role, you get on set and you have no idea what they're envisioning really, because they aren't so descriptive. And there is like a spectrum of, what that can look like on screen. So I think that's very cool that you at least brought it up to Brandon. You're like, oh, hey, can you be a little more specific on what we're getting into here? Because, I mean, this is a comedy, but,
They kiss is very vague, giving us the opportunity to really dig into the context, which is why in my work, my first conversation is with the director. What are they looking to achieve? What in their mind? What is their vision? Because at the end of the day, my job is there to help advocate for the actors. But the equal part of that coin is to make sure that the director's vision is coming to pass. If we can get clear on the context and understand what it is, that way actors can get on board because they know what it is. They're not guessing.
You have a really cool job. I really think that every production, if they don't already hire intimacy coordinators, they need to, they will be, after they listen to this episode. No, but seriously, I think like if HBO was calling you guys and was like, oh my God, it's like having a therapist on set when you're working on something really dark and scary. Like, when people are put in vulnerable positions, like it's really nice to have that kind of support. So I can't speak highly enough on what you're doing. Well, I have to, we got to end this episode, but this was so much fun to talk to you. I want to know where can people find you, hire you, get in touch if they need an intimacy professional, and see your work. So
yeah, please hire me. Please call me.
Yeah, of course.
Well, the next show, I'm working on a show right now for Women's Project Theater in New York City, the off-Broadway company up on 74th and Broadway. We're doing a show called Dirty Laundry, and it opens October 6th. It's going to be really exciting. And if anybody wants to find me, you can just go to my website, which is judilewisockler.com. Pretty easy to find.
Awesome. And do you have an Instagram?
Oh, yes, of course.
Well, we got to follow you there.
Okay, it's Judi Luo. So Judilewo. You can find me there.
Awesome. Well, thanks for hanging out with us today, and congrats on Plan B. It's a great movie. And I got to say, those scenes are very, very funny. So you guys, Brandon and Judi, you guys did it. You made everyone seem like they were having a good time, and that's why the audience loves it. So I'm excited for everyone else to see it. And that's our episode. Thanks again for joining us.